TalkShoe. Recorded live.
Hello, everyone. This is Markus Allen, and it is exactly 4 o'clock Thursday, January 6th, 2010. For those of you who are new to me, once again, my name is Markus Allen. I started a website called truthin7minutes.com. That's truthin7minutes.com. And I'm reading the comments in our live chat. If you're listening to a recording of this, you can get the live chat archives, see what people are saying and trading notes and links by going to www.fetch123.com/TalkShoe, TalkShoe, and then you would put in the call ID of 17245, and in this particular case, you want to look for the one all the way down at the bottom, which is Henry Makow. Henry Makow is a truth seeker. He was born in Zurich, Switzerland, from what I've read and understand, and he moved in with his family to Canada, in Ottawa specifically, and at the age of 11, he began to write a syndicated advice to parents column called Ask Henry. He also received his PhD in English literature from the University of Toronto in 1982, and 2 years later invented the board game, which is probably in your closet, called Scruples, which is a game of moral dilemmas. What would you do if? What would you do if you hit someone's car? Would you report the accident, run away, et cetera, et cetera? And there's a little bit more to the story. He apparently sold his house for $35,000, using the money to produce an initial 5,000 copies of Scruples for Canadian distribution. Later that year in April, the $18 game was introduced to America. A month later, Johnny Carson gave him his 15 minutes of fame by reading Scruples questions to 20 million viewers. The game was originally designed and marketed by Henry in 1984, who later sold the rights to Hasbro Canada, and in 1986 got approximately $1 million for it. To date, the game has sold over 7 million copies. I'm reading what Guest 4 is saying. Guest 4 said he probably listened to Stump Markus. That's earlier today. I host a weekly, every Thursday at high noon, business-to-business building broadcast, talkcast, where I help businesses make more money, that evil thing called money. And Guest 4 is assuming that he listened to Stump Markus because I kind of went on a rant about this call. And let me check my email, just give the benefit of the doubt to see if he's emailing in. I predicted on Stump Markus he wouldn't show up. And it's still close to 4 o'clock. We'll give him a few more minutes before I go completely ape bonkers on him. The reason we're having this call is because one of my subscribers to Truth in 7 Minutes, boy, a lot of people are showing up here to listen to this, someone asked me what I thought about Mr. Makow. And I said, well, I don't think too much about him. He has a lot of controlled opposition characteristics, especially on his website. And then it seemed that he was believing the official story of what happened on 9/11, but what it was is he apparently gets guests to post rants and opinions on his site, and you constantly have to look at the top of each article to see who wrote it. So when I first saw it, I was assuming, since it was on the site and it was in a letter style type of thing, that he was writing this, and he was buying into the idea that 9/11, the official story, was correct. Well, anyone who's seeking truth nowadays knows that nothing could be further from the truth, and I think we've got Henry on the line. So let me punch him through. Henry, is that you? I'll try one more time here.
Markus, I'm here.
Hey, how are you?
Markus?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, perfect timing, because I just read your biography, and so we don't have to bore you with hearing about yourself again. So let's get right to the questions, because I know that you're short on time. Are you there?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
I actually had I told my subscribers that you would be here, and about a dozen of them are here listening in, which is fantastic. And some of them wrote some questions in, and I have a few questions before I go to their questions. And my first question is an easy one. What got you into the truth-seeking? What's the best word I don't want to say business, because it is a business. The truth-seeking arena.
Okay. Well, you're right. It is a business, but for the first 8 or 9 years, it was a total labor of love on my part, in that there was no income from it. After 8 or 9 years, I had accumulated enough material that I was able to publish some books based on that material.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the books, especially Illuminati, are reasonably successful. So, it's a pleasant surprise that there's actually some, material reward for my work. But for 9 years, or 8 or 9 years, there was no material reward, and I did it as a labor of love, and I'd do it again. In fact, I'd be doing it now, even if there's no return, because I believe certain things need to be said.
Mm-hmm.
So how did I get involved in this?
Mm-hmm. Was there like an epiphany, or?
Yeah, there was, in a way. I went back to teaching part-time. I have a PhD in English, so I was teaching English part-time at the local university.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to have a discussion about feminism in relation to some of the books on my course, like D.H. Lawrence or Chekhov. And I discovered that you cannot question feminism. If you do, you'll be slandered. I was accused of sexual harassment, totally unfounded, and then by women's studies students who were in my class, and then the whole administration was feminist. They didn't care about intellectual discourse. They just cared about indoctrinating students in feminism. And I was pretty well shown the door. I mean, they let me finish up the course, but the year, but it was clear that I wasn't going to be asked to teach again. And I was shocked, because I was under the illusion that the university was a place for, debate and intellectual discourse, quest for truth. That has changed radically since around the mid-'90s. And universities are now places where political conformity, political correctness are enforced. So I tried to figure out, what's going on here. And, excuse me, I went to see an acquaintance who is the executive director of the Manitoba Business Council. So he'd be sort of like a CFR person, mm-hmm. Council on Foreign Relations type person, mm-hmm. in the province, in the state where I live. Right, I live in Manitoba, Canada. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, what's going on at the university? He represents the biggest corporations in the province. I said, don't you guys care that the university which you support with your donations is essentially promoting homosexuality? And socialism or communism. And he pretended it wasn't happening, but he knew it was. And so I forget, well, what's going on? What's going on here? It doesn't make any sense. Business is supposed to be conservative, right? And here it is. It's essentially communist or socialist. And so I that's when I was lucky enough to pick up a book, I think by Jasper, called Hidden Power, something like that. I forget the name of the book, but it was one of the books by the John Birch Society of all people, and that started to open my eyes on what's really going on in the world. So if you want, that's how I started to to figure out that what we see is not really what is happening.
And when you say the John Birch Society of all people in quotes, I'm assuming you're wrapping that in quotes, what do you mean by that?
I mean that they're actually a false opposition. Mm-hmm. They'll actually expose the Rockefellers, mm-hmm. but they won't. But they'll run interference when it comes to Zionism, the Rothschilds, 9/11, and Israel, mm-hmm. and organized Jewry. So they're actually financed by the Rockefellers.
Now let's talk about Jews, because I asked you a couple of days ago when we traded phone calls and emails. I said, "Is there anything that's off limits to talk about on the phone call?" And you wrote back Jews, and then ... and then went all the way down the page, and then you had the big smiley face. It's interesting because I read your bio, and according to your bio, it says that you were born a Jew from Zurich, Switzerland. Is that correct?
Yeah. And
I was also born a Jew, interestingly enough, and now I guess we're both considered the worst of Jews. And so one of the questions that I got from one of my subscribers is this. Let me read this to you. I have like 6 pages of questions. So this is you're like a pretty big deal. I didn't know you were such a big deal. I mean, as soon as I told people I was interviewing you, I got all these questions. Here we go. It says, he is Jewish, acts Christian, but makes no profession of Christian faith, which frustrates several of his readers who ask him candidly but will not be pinned down. And by the way, this is from someone who is a fan of yours. So what would you say to that? It says, he is Jewish, acts Christian, but makes no profession of Christian faith, which frustrates several readers who ask him candidly but will not be pinned down.
Okay. I subscribe to Jesus' teachings in the New Testament. In other words, I regard them as an ideal. But I don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. I believe he expressed God's will. Now, if he happens to be the Son of God, all the better. I'd be elated if, in fact, he was the Son of God and had a more intimate connection a total one-on-one connection with God. I'd be happy to be wrong about this, but I happen to think that he expressed God's will. I think that's the most any human being can do. And he was, a great teacher, and I believe the human race would have been better, and the Jews would have been better to have followed his teachings. Does that explain it?
I am totally non-religious, so any talk of religion kind of sails over my head. I'm probably the most skeptical person on the planet. No kidding. Literally the most skeptical person on the planet. I don't trust a single thing that history tells us. I don't trust a single thing that the military media tells us. Nothing. So I'm sure it will satisfy the person who asked that, but for me, it's just like I don't even like talking about religion. So
okay, let's go to the next question.
Yeah, let's go to the next question. Well,
well, maybe I should talk about the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Jews don't realize it, but their leaders are mostly the bankers, and they're funded by the bankers like the Rothschilds and Kabbalists. And the Rothschilds are Kabbalists who are essentially Satanists, and they are the Illuminati. So the Jews are basically being used as a kind of Trojan horse. They're being manipulated by the Rothschild bankers in order to achieve the one world government which the bankers are going to control. So the Jews are really, Jewish people are really very, very in jeopardy because they're basically out front and they don't even know it in terms of the New World Order. And that's just what I'm just trying to point this out. The way,
so in simple speak, you're saying I guess the simplest way to distill it is they're scapegoated dupes?
Well, if anything goes wrong, they'll be scapegoated, yeah, and they'll take the blame. And they're not alone. It's not just Jews, it's the Freemasons. And, of course, as you know, Freemasons aren't only Jews. The B'nai B'rith are Jewish, but Freemasons embrace every race and every so-called religion.
Right. A lot of people don't know that, but B'nai B'rith is a Freemasonic organization.
You bet.
Mm-hmm.
And so is Zionism, and so is communism.
Mm-hmm.
Those are Masonic organizations.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to the next question. Perfect segue. We're speaking of Jews and scapegoating. Here's from John. It says, phenomenal. I've been a fan of him for several years and own one of his books. He has been reticent to tell his audience what he thinks really happened in the Holocaust. He said the Holo hoax. This may have something to do with Canadian law, but his comments show that he knows the real score. What do you think about that?
Well, I believe the numbers might have been exaggerated, but I do believe there was, a massive slaughter of Jews that justify the term Holocaust. But in my writing, I made it clear that other groups suffered as much or more than the Jews, and I don't think the Jews should have any special status in terms of the Holocaust. And I object to the fact that the Holocaust is being used for political gain. And in fact, the Holocaust took place for political gain as well, to traumatize Jews and force them to devote their lives to Israel. So basically, that's an example of Jews are being manipulated by the Illuminati bankers, who I believe put Hitler into power. Does that answer the question?
I think it somewhat answers the question. My personal question on that, much like 9/11, is: are you open-minded to the idea, if someone could prove it to you, that the Holocaust was a complete hoax, or is that an impossible thing for you to consider?
Well, no, I'd be open-minded to it, and I'm all for investigation, and I'm against putting Holocaust researchers in jail. I'm definitely open to it, but you've got to understand that my parents were in Poland and Germany during the war. They passed as non-Jews. They were in fear of their lives every minute of every day. They essentially told me, in fact, my father was at Buchenwald after the war. They told me that they knew that even Germans were telling them that Jews were being gassed. So my parents had no reason to lie to me. So together with my parents' testimony and the other Holocaust testimony that I've read, I think it did take place. Maybe not on exactly 6 million. Maybe it was 5 million. Raoul Hilberg says it was 5 million. Maybe it was 4 million. I don't know the exact number, but I do tend to believe that yes, Jews were gassed as well as Poles and Gypsies and so on. And the reason I believe that is, why would they round people up to work? They rounded up everybody, but not everybody could work. So I think they most likely gassed the people who were unfit for work, who were probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the people they rounded up. There's no question they rounded up these people. they would not put them in a country club situation. You know, the war was a very brutal event, and everybody suffered. Also, you know, no one ever questions the fact that 3 million Poles were slaughtered by the Germans. Yet the Jews were below the Poles in terms of Untermensch. They got less rations, and they're considered inferior to Poles. So why is it that people question that Jews were gassed, but no one questions the Poles were?
That's a great question. However, being the most skeptical person on the planet, I question anything that has happened in history. And that's something that you and I agree on with, too, is what happened I think, with what did not happen on 9/11. I've read a few things that you've said that you're having a hard time believing that airplanes sliced through buildings and came out the other side intact, correct?
Yeah, I think my thinking is this: there's obviously no plane hit the Pentagon. Obviously, no plane hit Shanksville.
Right.
Obviously, no plane hit World Trade Center 7, which also was demolished. So my hunch is that no plane hit the World Trade Center towers, and that's supported by the people that showed the tip of the plane coming out of the other side of in one of the broadcasts.
Actually, in all the broadcasts. Mm-hmm.
In all the broadcasts. Well, there you go. So I don't think any planes were involved, and I think all the eyewitnesses were actually paid CIA assets.
Mm-hmm. Do you think people died in the towers?
People died in the towers?
Yeah.
Well, for sure.
Now, when you say for sure, how do we know for sure?
Well, when the towers collapsed, I believe at least 3,000 people died. Yeah, they were stuck. I believe people were stuck in the towers. They couldn't get out.
I'll ask the same question from before. Are you open-minded if I can prove right now that hardly anyone was in the towers?
Sure.
Okay,
Why
good.
not?
Well, if you were to, I'm getting the exact quote from the New York Times and the USA Today, which, of course, here in the States are pretty big corporate newspapers. Let's see here. New York.
Marcus, listen, who were they paid? Who did the 9/11 bereaved families? Who were paid? They were paid off with millions of dollars.
$3.8 million. Yep.
Yeah. 3.8.
Yep. 3.8 million reasons to lie.
Well, okay. Well, anyway, you know what? I'm open-minded to this, but I really don't want to devote our time together to this subject. I mean, you can devote a show to that if that's your one of your convictions that you want to put forward.
Can I just read you one paragraph from each newspaper?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And the New York Times said, just before the South Tower collapsed at 9:59 a.m., a spurt of calls reached the 9/11 operators. One of these was from Shimmy Bigleson, who worked for Fiduciary Trust in the South Tower on computer systems. And here's the important part. He said he was on the 97th floor where, by chance, an emergency drill had been scheduled for that day. Now, why is that important? I actually interviewed a survivor here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And to make a long story short, her mom said that her daughter was not allowed to go into the building on 9/11 that day. She got to work an hour beforehand, and she was physically turned around because of a pre-planned fire drill, which is just confirmed here in the New York Times. And then in the USA Today, which is even more interesting, it says, quote, the buildings were half empty when the jet struck. USA Today estimates 5,000 to 7,000 people were in each tower when the attack began. Earlier estimates range from 10,000 to 25,000 per tower. But company head counts show, and here's the important part, show many desks were empty at 8:46 a.m. And then finally, there was a book written in 1999 documenting who was leaseholders in the Twin Towers. And in the book, it confirmed that not even 5% of the building was full. It was 95% unoccupied. What do you think about that?
1999.
which was less than 2 years of 9/11.
Well, okay. Anyway, like I said, I'm open. This is first I've heard this idea, but I would tend to think that, I would tend to think that a lot of people died when the buildings were demolished, but including the rescuers who were in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's go on to the next question.
Okay. This is a question for me. When you post an article from a guest writer on your site, how should we take that? Is this an endorsement from you, or are you just putting it out there? How should we take it?
Well, some of them I'm just putting it out there, like that Simon Magus article. I think I just have a hunch that Simon Magus person is important, so I just wanted to put it out there. I tend to put up things that I like for one reason or another, or things that I think need to be said. So some of the articles I actually assign to the guest writers. Other times they suggest them. I pay some of them to write these articles.
So again, how should we take that? I mean, the reason I ask is because I was very turned off before you came here. I was explaining this because you put up an article saying that the no planes theory is nonsense and this and that. And the only way I knew, actually, I later found there are two ways. The only way I knew that you didn't write that is because there was a little blurb in brackets where you talked about the plane slicing through the buildings. If I had skipped over that and scanned the article, I would have thought that you actually wrote that article that said that no planes is nonsense.
Wasn't there a name on the article? Well,
that's the thing. That's the second place I knew, because then when I read your blurb, then my eye went up to see who wrote the article, and it was someone else. But before that, I went to all your articles, and I just assumed, because it was in that letter style format, it wasn't painfully obvious that someone was a guest blogger or guest writer. So I assumed that all the articles on your website were actually from you. And I was just shaking my head. I was like,
Markus, I'm not prolific enough to write an article every single day. So that, that's why.
I understand, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I put up stuff that people send to me. So that I write once or twice a week, and then I put up stuff that other people write. And I've been doing it long enough that there a handful of like-minded people who can produce worthwhile things. And in fact, some of my most popular articles, more popular than anything I've written, were written by contributors.
Mm-hmm.
So,
in my business, I make a lot of money from an article that was a contributor written from 7 years ago. So I love contributed articles. But when it comes to, again, I don't know how to I don't know what the message is when there's an article from a guest writer. I don't know if you're endorsing it. I don't know if you agree with it, or you're just putting it out there. So that's my question. How should we take that?
Well, some of them I'm endorsing, and some of them I don't endorse. And when I don't endorse them, I'll put a little editor's note.
Okay, and is the editor's note within the article itself, or at the bottom typically?
It'll usually it's at the top.
Okay. And I see some people are asking what your website is again. So I know you have a couple different ones. Which ones would you like people to?
I really have only one main website, and that's henrymakow.com, or you can find it by savethemails.ca, the old title. Save the Mails CA, which is it started off as a critique of feminism,
mm-hmm.
and now it's henrymakow.com, henrymakow.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a great segue back into one of the questions which we briefly talked about in the beginning about feminism, which is, my question to Henry is, in regards to the feminist movement, how did they manage to get such a grip over women in such a short period of time? Where did the funding come from? Which organizations pushed the agenda? And also, which psychological methods did they use to influence women's psyche so profoundly to this day?
Well, I've dealt with this in articles, but if you Google, for example, women's studies and Rockefeller Foundation, you'll find hundreds of thousands of links. Essentially, the whole women's movement is funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, which is in the business of social engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, have a controlling interest in most American corporations. So they pretty well determine where the advertising goes. Plus, through Freemasonry, they determine which editors and broadcasters, professors, and writers will get heard. So essentially, it was a coordinated effort. They through their propaganda, they made it seem that marriage was a hardship for women, family was a hardship for women. Women were being oppressed if they couldn't have sex outside of wedlock, and if they couldn't have careers. And the whole point of it was to make women have careers instead of marriage and family. And that's what's happened. And the purpose of that is to undermine the family so that men can't support families, and women are too busy having careers and being alienated from men to have children. And as a result, the birth rate is way down. It's approximately half of what it was in 1960.
Mm-hmm.
And the divorce rate is quite high, and the marriage rate is fairly low.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just social engineering by the Illuminati bankers in order to destabilize society and break up the family, because they can control people who don't have families.
Mm-hmm. Now, you recognize the CFR and the Bill. I've scanned your website. You seem to recognize the CFR and the Bilderberg Group, correct?
Yeah.
What about the other parts of the Round Table groups, like the Club of Rome, or the Royal Institute of International Affairs, or the Canadian Institute of International Affairs, the Trilateral Commission, the Society of the Elect? Do you think they exist, or is that just propaganda?
Well, yeah, they exist, all right. And the Illuminati. I mean, the Illuminati bankers, they fund everything. They've got all the they create money. They get billions in interest from the national debts. They've got money to burn, and so they're hydra-headed monsters. There's 1,000 different faces, and you just mentioned a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is, if you want to succeed, you've got to work for them, because that's where the money is.
Mm-hmm.
So people, like most creatures, figure out where the money is and adopt views that will allow them to, earn large salaries.
Mm-hmm. Now, I first heard about you approximately 2, maybe 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly. And what led me to you was the name Benjamin Fulford. Do you have the same feelings for Benjamin Fulford today that you did when you first introduced us to him?
Well, no, because I finally met Benjamin Fulford in Ottawa, which is actually both of our hometowns. It was not last summer, the summer before. And I asked him about his Red and Green Dragon Society, of assassins that are going to come out and get the Illuminati. And he sort of sheepishly admitted that they were Illuminati themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I don't. I don't have the same feelings I do, and I retracted by writing an article afterward in which Benjamin appears with Rockefeller, David Rockefeller, who he was threatening.
Oh, in a hotel room, right?
Yeah, and he looks like he was sitting on. He looks like a little boy sitting on Santa's knee.
Right.
So I realized that Fulford cannot be taken too seriously.
Okay, so would you say that you were perhaps duped?
It was a great story, and even in the initial story, I did say, I did say that these dragons, the society, were taking on the establishment, and that's a tall order. But yeah, I suppose I was duped to some extent by he's a former correspondent for Forbes in Tokyo, so I took him seriously, and but I quickly retracted when I realized that he couldn't be trusted.
So there's an article on your site about the retraction, because I'd love to see that.
Yeah, there is.
Do you remember what it's called, so we can maybe do a search and take a look at that? I don't want to go over that right now, but
yeah, it's don't hold your breath. Illuminati Ninja warriors, don't hold your breath or something.
Oh, okay.
Try that. Makow, don't hold your breath, Fulford. I think you'll find it.
Okay, I'll do that after we talk. That would be great. I know we're short on time. You said that you wanted to do 30 minutes and see how things go, and it is exactly 30 minutes right now. So did you want to keep going, or?
I'll do 10 more minutes.
Okay. I have a bunch of names, and since we're short on time, I'll just name the name and tell me your quick thoughts about them. Ready?
Sure.
Webster Tarpley.
Oh, I should tell you, I don't criticize people in the movement. First of all, I would have to be incredibly informed about all these people in the movement. So I generally, my policy is that anyone in what I call the movement, the anti-New World Order movement, unless they do something egregious like Fulford did, I don't say anything critical about them. I believe in solidarity. I believe we've got enough on our plate without internecine, fighting. So I actually have a lot of respect for Tarpley.
Mm-hmm.
We have a slightly different orientation. I'm one of the few people who, we use the J word.
Jew or Jesuit?
Jew.
So what do you think about the Jesuits? Because I know that you said that you didn't think they held too much. I want to get the exact quote, so I'm not misquoting you.
I'm not misinformed. I'm not terribly informed of the Jesuits. I've never considered them terribly important.
Uh-huh.
I consider organized Jewry, Zionism, Freemasonry the most important bodies, and the international bankers. I imagine they connect with the Jesuits in some way, and the Jesuits do play an important role. But I'm just not informed, and the fact that I'm not informed is a reflection on the on the importance I give them. Someday I will sit down and get informed, but I'm afraid that's a shortcoming on my part. I'm just not sufficiently informed.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough. I appreciate that honesty. There's someone who you just featured on your website, and if you won't say anything bad about people, I'd like to get your reaction at least to the following names: Victor E. Schaaf, Vernon Schwartz, Amos Eicher, Peter Dunn, Ian McDermott, Victor Earl Schaaf, Fritz Springmeier.
Well, the only name I recognize is Fritz Springmeier.
Well, guess what?
What?
Allegedly, those names that I just read were his aliases.
Well, again, Fritz may be taking me in the way Benjamin Fulford did to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But my policy is basically to give people the benefit of the doubt until I have a reason to not to. And I so far Fritz Springmeier has given me no reason to distrust him.
Mm-hmm.
And I have read his books, and he's done important work at a time when hardly anyone was doing this kind of work, and I think he deserves our support.
Okay. In the remaining moments I have, I'll have another question. Actually, I got two questions left. Henry may not be the guy to ask, but I wanted to get opinions from him or you, meaning me, about Bill Cooper and his death. Was he for real or controlled resistance?
Again, I'm not sufficiently informed about Bill Cooper, but from what I've seen and heard, I have a lot of respect for him. I just haven't got around to reading. I've got his book, Pale Horse. Behold a Pale Horse, is it?
Right.
I should read it. I did look at one or two essays a few years ago. I have a lot of respect for him. I think the fact that he was killed pretty well proves his bona fides.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, the latest events prompted a second question from the same person. Hundreds of birds and thousands of fish die off quickly. Why? What do you think's up with that?
I don't know. I think it's very disturbing. I'd like to get to the bottom of it. I just don't have all the answers. I just have my areas of interest and expertise, and I just focus on that. I'm mainly Freemasonry, Illuminati bankers, Zionism, and feminism.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, let me repeat your website again. It is Henry Makow, H-E-N as in Nancy, RYMAKOW.com. You can also go to SaveTheMales.com. Is it Save the Males plural?
Yeah, and it's not .com, it's .ca.
I'm sorry, .ca, which is Canada. And you can go there, and there's a lot of information. And it seemed, I'm guessing, I actually have a final question. I'm guessing you're saying that the Illuminati is the top of the chain, of the food chain?
Yeah, but it's big, and I think the top of the food chain is, I could be wrong, but I think it's the Rothschilds. The Rothschild family, and I think that's the top of the food chain.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I really appreciate you giving us the time to give us your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks very much for your interest in my work, Marcus.
You got it.
And good luck with yours.
Oh, thank you, Henry. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There you go. Was I a good boy, everyone? 42 minutes. I was off by a minute. How funny is that? Actually, he got here 4 minutes late, so I was off by a couple more minutes. Well, if you'd like to call in and discuss what he discussed, I have lots of thoughts. I was too nice. I know I was too nice. I just knew that he's going to hang up. I mean, when he says he doesn't want to talk about 9/11, that is such an acid test to me. Both 9/11 and the Jesuits. If you look the other way when it comes to 9/11 or look the other way when it comes to the Jesuits, then you're just controlled opposition. I don't even need to look further than that. But, he's up for the idea of no planes, and that's same thinking about that I have. But notice how quickly he didn't want to talk about 9/11 and no one in the building. That's very telling to me. And to say that the Illuminati and I'm reading what Doberman Dan just said. Yeah, he seemed pretty standoffish about both those topics. Right. Well, that's how controlled opposition works. It's almost like a grid. By the way, if you guys want to call in, that'd be fantastic. If not, I'm finishing my day of beauty. I got my manicure, I got my pedicure, I almost got my eyes done, my eyebrows, my bushy eyebrows stripped and waxed from a hot little Asian woman. But I didn't want to miss the 4 o'clock appointment with Henry, so I skipped that, and then I'm getting my hair cut, and I'm going out on the date with my son, which I do every Thursday. So if there are no questions, I'll just mosey on. But if you want to call in, here's the number, which is at the bottom of the interactive chat screen. Let me press that button again. Here we go. 724-444-7444. Once again, that number is 724-444-7444. Excuse me. Some of that pizza I had is kicking up right now. The call ID is 17245. Follow that by the pound sign. Once again, 17245. And then you're going to be asked for the PIN number. Take care, Dan. Back to work. I'll talk to you soon. PIN number lets me know who's on the call. Typically, your PIN number is the phone number you signed up with TalkShoe. That'll get you in on the call, and then if you want to chat, you just have to let me know, kind of ring the bell, and you ring the bell by hitting star and the number 8, star 8 on your telephone keypad. Guest 6 just said, Ha ha. I don't know what that means. I guess you're laughing at my mani-pedi. I'm so heterosexual or metrosexual, it's ridiculous. So while I wait for anyone to call in, a lot of people here today. It's amazing what happens when you interview well-known controlled opposition. I'll give it another minute before I give my final thoughts and then mosey on back into life. Or if you're shy and you want to give your thoughts on the chat, that's another way to do it too. I should probably tell you about our conversation we had privately. He didn't want to talk about Scruples. He's, of course, the inventor of the board game Scruples. And if you look at his logo on his website, it's very Masonic. The way you can tell, I just want to hear your take. Okay, cool, Jonna. I like that name, Jonna. Yeah, if you look at his, I'm bummed you didn't have time to take my questions on Stump Markus today. I didn't get to those questions, and I forgot where I put them. Is this Blaze? Not Blair. This is Blaze, right? Guest 12. Anyhow, here's the deal. He was on my freak. He wouldn't allow me to talk about his TV appearances. I couldn't talk about Scruples. He didn't want to talk about 9/11. It's Blair. I don't know what questions you're talking about, Blair. I know Blaze. If you want to email that to me again, I'll make sure to answer those questions on next week's Stump Markus, which is, again, for those who don't know, is my business-to-business broadcast that I do every high noon on Thursday. So, yeah, he has a Freemasonic logo, the sun. If you look at Fortune 500 company logos, they all have the same thing in common. It's 3 eclipses or the full sun. Look at everything from Sunoco Gas to, I'm drawing a blank right now. Like, it's a ridiculous amount of logos have 3 eclipses of the sun in their logos. That is code. That's what Freemasons do. They implant code within their logos to let other Freemasons know who is authorized to do business with. And Henry Makow has that. And typically what you find is that people who out Freemasons, and of course I out Freemasons too, but I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't even know what a Mason was until 3 years ago. I thought Masons before that were people who poured concrete and laid brick. I didn't even know what Freemason meant. I thought Freemason was different than a Mason. They're apparently the same. I have no ties to secret societies. I have absolutely no ties to the military. I have one cousin of mine who I never talk to who's in the Israeli army, and the only reason he's in it is because anyone who lives in Israel, and he's from the States, by the way. I don't blame him. Beautiful women in Israel. The only reason he's in the military in Israel is because it's mandatory, compulsory for 2 years, from what I understand. So I have no connections to any of these people. And I was going to, actually, when he left, the only reason I didn't ask is it went so well. I didn't want to, I knew he was going to leave anyway, and I didn't want him to think I was a total dick. But I was going to ask him if he was a Freemason, because on his websites are Freemasonic code, including the name of his game company. It's High Game Enterprises. That's as Masonic as it gets, Enterprises. Any shuttle mission, Enterprise, what are the shuttle missions? Enterprise, and that's all Masonic lingo. What else do we got here? He apparently sold his house for $35,000 using money to reproduce an initial 5,000 copies of Scruples, but then now has sold 7 million copies of Scruples. Right, Enterprise, Rent-A-Car. My brother works for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Has to wear a suit. That's very Masonic. So there's no way. And he was on he got his game on the Johnny Carson show for 15 minutes. He was on What's My Line for an entire episode. That you're authorized from the top to get to the top when that happens. There's No way he's just some schmo off the street who sold his house for $35,000. And, I mean, give me a break. I mean, he was promoted to the top by the top. The game was originally designed and marketed by Henry Makow in 1984, who later sold the rights to Hasbro. You might want to look into what the acronym Hasbro, bro, that's Brotherhood. Hasbro Canada in 1986 for approximately $1 million. Under Hasbro, the game sold over 7 million copies. Hasbro later returned the rights to High Game Enterprises, who continues to market the game to this day. Why is it that I wasn't allowed to talk about scruples with him during this conversation? Why was that off limits? Just amazing to me. Guest 8. What is your take on the movie Zeitgeist? All right, I guess we're off Henry Makow now. Total Controlled Opposition. If you look at who produced the film, I forget the person's name. I believe he's a High Mason. So don't have much to say good about the movie. My daughter's dojo are in with the Masons. I don't know what dojo is. Didn't know that till late in the game after she got her black belt. Maybe that's karate. Dojo. I think I should change my name to Mark Dojo. Sounds really tough. Right. Richard just said in Canada, I would have loved to hear his thoughts on marketing. Maybe he needs to be on the stuff. That's what I was like, praising him for how, 7 million copies. And he's like, listen, I don't want to talk about that. He was like a mafia guy. Look, I don't want to talk about that. It's like, okay, I won't talk about that. At least I'll talk about it behind your back, but not to your face. Yes, karate. Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Guest 8, I heard that most Masons have no idea about things unless they're above 33 degree. Could be. I would tend to believe that the vast majority of Masons, those who go to the Blue Lodge, etc., have absolutely no idea. They're just getting away from their wives and looking to have a fun time at the lodge and drink it up. Perhaps do some charitable work, which is all a fraud, by the way. All charities are a fraud. Every single one of them is a fraud. Every time you send money to a charity, you're literally enabling a fraud. No more than 5% of your funds goes to the actual cause itself. You should look up Bono charity fraud on Google and see. I don't even think he gave 1% to the cause. Richard said, would he talk about it on your other show? No. In fact, that's what I asked him. I said, I didn't want to do this 4 o'clock thing. I said, can we schedule it for 12 o'clock? We'll talk about scruples on my marketing broadcast. And that's when he's like, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, like the Godfather. So he did. Something isn't right. Also, if you, I'll give you most of his address. He's on Kenora Street in Winnipeg. And if you look at his house through Google Maps, he lives for someone who sold 7 million units of something, he lives quite humbly. It was also interesting. I'd be curious to find out if he called on Google Voice. I gave him Google Voice because I asked him, I said, are you okay calling into the United States? And he had a problem with that. Now, for the 40 minutes that he called, it probably cost him $5. And he was having a hard time. I even told him, I said, I'll PayPal you $10 to cover the cost of the call. I mean, something isn't right. It's almost like he's a front guy. It's just weird. Any other questions before I run? What do you guys think? Did he have a good time here? Could you tell in his voice? I don't think he was comfortable. He didn't sound comfortable to me. I think he was waiting for the shoe to drop. He didn't seem happy, said guest 6. No. Nope, not at all. Anywho, if more questions come in, I'll take them. But in the meantime, my name is Mark Allen. I started a website on September 11th at 8:46 in the morning, on that infamous morning, back in 2008, called truthandsevenminutes.com. That's truth and seven, the number 7, minutes.com. I actually, when I asked Henry about what was his epiphany that got him into truth, that was a very odd answer. And maybe it wasn't so odd. It was all right. But what got me started doing this was when my family went to Disney World after I found out about how evil Disney World is, showed them pages and pages and pages and pages of evidence showing how Disney is the largest porn producer, and Disney puts the word sex in the middle of its movies subconsciously. Go look at The Lion King, when Mustafa is sitting on his back and the stars arrange and form a 3-letter word, it forms the word sex. And I showed this video to my wife. Oh, that's right, I'm not supposed to make fun of my wife anymore. I get yelled at about that. I explained it to some woman who I sleep with, and all that stuff didn't matter, and they went to Disney. And I said, if you go to Disney, I'm going to create a website and start going nuts about this stuff. And I think, except for that female person who sleeps with me, has turned out for the best. I've met all kinds of great people who know something is wrong in life but don't know what it is, and thus created truthandsevenminutes.com. I actually got started on the Paula Gloria broadcast, and she is total controlled opposition, total new age nonsense. Just amazing. Guess 6, if someone was a UN advisor for the Vatican, he will know some truth, correct? Don't know. Simon Shack's father was a UN advisor probably for the Vatican for 35 years, and Simon Shack claims that his father was a good guy and didn't know that the UN was a nefarious organization, which I find ridiculous. Guest 11, find the gruesome truth about the Masons on cuttingedge.org. Never heard of that. Sounds like Cutting Through the Matrix. Alan Watt, who is controlled opposition, gives us great, great stuff, but is total scaremongering, controlled opposition. Makow was on his guard, no way. Dave, what is no way for? I am replying to Cave Monk Dave. Guest 8, thanks Marcus. Did you do the bioscan thumbprint? I don't know what that means. But no, I don't do that. I resist. I say no. What is the bioscan thumbprint? Is that something new coming down the pike? Any other questions? As the haircut lady is waiting for me. Actually, I have another half hour. Snip, snip. Oh, at Disney. No, I didn't go to Disney. Did they do the bioscan thumbprints? I think the bioscan thumbprints at Disney is only for people who are doing some kind of like stayover or are within the hotel. Or it's something that I don't think or if they did, they lied, which is possible. I know my family's trying to convince me to go to Disney so I can do research because they love it so much. They're like, look, yeah, you can go around and point things out. Of course, they're lying because they hate when I point things out because I'm constantly pointing things out, and I don't blame them. We go to Washington, D.C., I'm constantly like, whoa, look at that hidden symbol. Look at that, the way the arm is on the hand. That's a Masonic symbol. It never ends. Never ends. Those scanners are all over Disney World. Yep. And that's just to acclimate you into what we're going into. It's nothing more than that. Put this way, he didn't add anything to the discussion, the real discussion. Didn't get much information from him no matter what you asked. That's a very good point, Dave. Quite frankly, that 40-minute interview was a complete waste of my carbon footprint. In fact, in summary, what did he reveal? Well, that the Rothschilds are at the top, which is utter nonsense. It goes way higher than the Rothschilds. he didn't have time to look into the Jesuits. The guy's 60-something years old. There's also something unrelated to this I wanted to talk about that's all over the news. My wife is always saying, how come you know so much about the news if you don't watch the news? And it's simple because, again, that's what I love about my website. I get emailed all kinds of tidbits from people, and that's great. My email address is on the website at truthin7minutes.com. Richard from Canada, Markus, I have to run, making dinner for my wife tonight. See you next week. Thank you, Richard. I'll see you next Thursday. Thanks for coming. So I get all these tidbits from people, and when anything propaganda-wise is occurring in the media, I get several emails saying the same thing. And what just happened recently? Now I'm drawing a blank. What is the big scaremongering that's going on right now besides WikiLeaks, which is nonsense? I am totally drawing a blank. Oh, Alex Jones and, how DVRs are erasing, right, the dead birds and fish, right, I'll get to that in a second, and how the DVRs are being erased from Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory show. This is like the 15th time I've said this. If I were to create a show about the stuff that we're talking about, the last title I would create, the absolute worst title I would create, is something called conspiracy theory. That's like, why not just call it Marcus Allen's kookery and douchebaggery? I mean, give me a break. And who owns True TV? That broadcasts Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory? Well, it's none other than Time Warner, which is, I mean, if you're going to talk about a new world order, they're at the top of the list. Dave, I'm scared of the new Oprah Winfrey Network. OWN. Yep, look at her logo, too, with the sun. I'm telling you, if you look at all the logos, and it's all suns, you will not believe how many logos, even in your little town, have a sun or 3 eclipses. They're like 3 little half-moon eclipses in the logo. That is such code. It is so in your face, in plain sight, that no one even sees. Phil DeGrave, ass hattery. Yes, Marcus Allen's ass hattery. I like that. So anyway, Alex Jones, of course, is leading the charge in saying that the people who run the DVR companies are selecting certain Jesse Ventura conspiracy theorist segments from their DVRs, which is probably true. I'm not disputing that it's not true. But guess who runs the military? I'm sorry. Guess who runs the media and YouTube and the DVR companies and Google? It's the military. So this is obviously a coordinated way. It's the this isn't for you strategy. What you do is you tell people smoking, you can't smoke unless you're 18. Well, what happens? Everyone who's under 18 wants to smoke. Same thing with drinking. You can't drink till you're 21. Everyone begs to drink when they're 21. What happens when they're 22? Drinking's no big deal. So that's what you do. You whip people up. This is psychopathic marketing 101. If you want to get people inspired and passionate about something, you take away their freedoms. So what do? You tell people that they're taking away your shows that you have hidden on your DVR. It's just brilliant genius. I would read what Phil just read, but it would take some explaining to do. Yeah, so always think what the agenda is, even when it comes to what appears to be the truth. Why would YouTube delete certain videos from YouTube? Well, it's because you're going to get Alex Jones like a lunatic ranting and raving that YouTube, the evil YouTube, is, preventing you from finding out the truth, so you want it even more. This is coordinated. Totally. Okay, I'm going to give it 60 more seconds. unless there are any more questions, I'm going to sign off. Chris just posted a YouTube video. Bill just said Oprah's, in quotes, charity work. Yep. Remember, charity is it's loot. It's a criminal activity under the guise that you're helping people who can't eat or have been flooded out. Oh, that just reminded me. Thank you, Jonna. Appreciate the kudos. Whenever I tell people that it's windier than ever and the weather is controlled by a joystick by the Navy, they always roll their eyes at me. And there's been a series of articles that have come out which concerns me, quite frankly, that agrees. That says, for example, in Abu Dhabi, 52 downpours were created in the middle of the desert by a company with an $8 million budget, a secret company. So if you think Mother Nature is controlling our weather, you're just living in la-la land. Guest 8, is Obama from Kenya? My answer is it doesn't matter. Politics is complete professional wrestling. It is there to give you the idea that you're free and that you have choice and that you have hope, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's complete, utter nonsense. I will not talk about politics. That's like asking me, do you think Hulk Hogan's going to win tonight's match? And I'm scratching my head. I'm like, you're a smart guy and you think wrestling is real? I'm not even going to dignify that with a reply. Slacker said, are there any decent forums out there anymore? There's not a single forum out there that, to me, gives us truth. Not even close. The only forum that I go to, just because it's an absolute monster and it's actually fun to watch how frequent it is Godlike Productions, GODLIKE Productions.com. 99% of the posts there are scaremongering nonsense. Sometimes you get some very, very good stuff. There was a thread there recently where a guy said, prove to me that smoking's bad for you. Give me one scientific study that proves that smoking is, bad for you, that causes cancer. And out of 10 pages of discussion, not a single person can produce a document showing, not statistically, but scientifically, that smoking causes cancer. Guest 8, thoughts on Obama as a CIA implant. I don't even think the CIA is real. I think the CIA is Hollywood East. They come up with scary scenarios, and you think they have James Bond equipment, and I think it's all made up. Now, I might be wrong on that, and unlike Mr. Makow, I am open to any possibility. Isn't that amazing how I still can't believe that he wouldn't talk about 9/11. I mean, that was so in your face, it was like so obvious. So I don't really talk about CIA stuff. What is your thoughts on the birds and the fish? Fake? Yes, here's the first place I go to reverse engineer whether something is real, like the Gulf oil spill. I'm actually getting people, well-known people in my industry, by the way, one just asked me today, was the Gulf oil spill and core exits faked? And I said, yes. So here's what you do. Go to Flickr, www.flickr.com, right? Excuse me. And I typed in, like, Gulf oil spill, but in this case I typed in birds, and what was it, in Alabama? I think it was Alabama. So I type in birds and I hit a search, and then it'll show all the pictures of all of the photos that are tagged with birds in Alabama. And then I go to advanced search, and then I search by date. And then what I do is I want after, and I click on the after box, like the first of the year, because that's when the story hit. Now, if there are tons of birds that are dead, believe me, as the Yiddish word is, there are a bunch of yentas out there, those are busybodies, who will be snapping up those photos. Was it in Alabama? Does anyone remember? Anyone? I'm looking at the chat. Where all the birds died. So anyway, I go there, and and sure enough, there's hardly any dead birds shown as pictures. It can't be Alabama. It was some other state. Someone can help me out. We can do it. No, it wasn't Arizona. Arkansas. I think it was Arkansas. Birds, Arkansas. Right. So I hit birds, Arkansas. I did this morning, and there was 2 birds. That's it on Flickr. Yep, same 2 birds. Now, if there are tens of thousands of birds dropping from the skies, Flickr would be loaded with pictures of that. And they're not. Then what I do is I look at the usernames of the people who take the pictures. If it's the John Birch Society or some NGO, some non-governmental organization, some environmental group, well, that's propaganda. So I eliminate those pictures. So the only one that I saw this morning was from whatup.com or wadeup.com, W-A-D-E up.com. So one bird, tens of thousands of birds dropping out of the air, and there's one picture? Don't think so. So I'm not buying it. We have something that looks like oil all over our beach on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Yeah. You know, if you go to, it's a beach in Texas. That's where all the offshore drilling is occurring. From what I understand, these rigs spill oil minute by minute, every single day, all day long, and it's no big deal. So when people said they smell oil and this and that, fine. That happens all day long. It's no big deal. When they tell us that this is the biggest catastrophe in our lifetimes, and only one beach was closed from, by the way, this started on April 19th. Anyone who knows anything about conspiracies knows that they, according to Makow, that's the Illuminati, which is ridiculous. It goes way higher than that. They always do things on September 11th and April 19th. Look it up on Wikipedia. Do a search on Wikipedia for April 19th or September 11th. And there's an endless parade of events that miraculously occur on that date. So sure enough, the oil spill occurred on April 19th. So from April 19th until the summer, only one beach was closed. The greatest catastrophe ever, and only one beach is closed. And by the way, the beach is the same beach that's next to one of only 35 naval stations throughout the country, because the Navy's always involved in the scaremongering. So give me a break. I don't think we have rigs off our coast here in North Carolina. You probably don't. Probably don't. Okay. A couple more seconds, then I'm going to wrap this up, as the Masons love to say. Chris just wrote, Makow wrote an advice, probably column, wrote an advice column for parents when he was 11 years old. Mm-hmm. And that was distributed in 50 newspapers, by the way. I'm going to brag, I'm probably one of the better writers in my industry, and not a single media outlet will pick up my writing. So, because I'm not authorized, I'm not a Mason. It's simple. If you want your life to improve, like dramatically and almost instantly, from what I understand, go down to your local service club, and things just magically happen. K-Bonk Dave, I still want to have a chat about Plato, mathematics, and Wicca. Anytime. Email anytime, just like I've done with Chris. Chris is like, I want to talk about some things. Chris wants to talk about technology in 9/11. Quite frankly, much like Makow, I don't want to talk for eons about 9/11, but I'm willing to revisit it again. So we're doing that talk next Monday, the 10th, I believe, January 10th. I think it's at 8 o'clock. And anytime you want to talk, Dave, just say the word and we'll do it. I typically like doing Mondays and Thursday nights. Oil is all at the bottom of the ocean and it's still there. If you say so. You know, everything from the Holocaust to... By the way, did you know the Holocaust has a swimming pool? That Auschwitz has a swimming pool? Everyone should be watching the movie by David Cole. Go to YouTube, type in David Cole Holocaust. I lost my entire family. Remember, I was born a Jew. And all I did was send that video to my family. I didn't have a comment. All I said is, what do you think? And I sent a link to that video to my family. I have not spoken to my family since, my entire side of the family. So much for being a critical thinker. So everyone needs to see David Cole Holocaust. Type that into YouTube. And there was a swimming pool at Auschwitz. He proved that gas chambers could not have been used where we were told they were used. And it goes on and on and on. He went off the tour, and just amazing. Guest 11 for next time, cuttingedge.org. Gives info about 9/11 Illuminati card game years before it happened. See, I tend to think that, why would they continue? Why would Simon Shack and all the people who are into no planes, and I'm into no planes too, but why would they purposely put in at every angle? It wasn't one angle that they messed up. They messed up on all angles. Why would they purposely put a completely intact nose cone of an airplane going through steel concrete, chairs, furniture? I think it's because they want us to talk about this stuff. It's a fantastic distraction. So when they talk about, thank you, John Murray, for posting that link to video.google about David Cole. So when if you know Simon Shack every month comes out with a new revelation. I mean, we're going over 9 years now, and every month on the month, there's a new revelation about 9/11. Where, why didn't this stuff come out 8 years ago, or 7 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 5 years ago? It's to keep us muddied, just like JFK, 47 years later, and we still get the drip, drip, drip. Maybe the driver turned around and shot JFK. It's just a fantastic way to distract people from what's going on. Dave says, ask 100% of U.S. citizens to name even one Holocaust camp, and 99% can't name more than one. I can't name more than one. I've got Auschwitz with a Treblinka, I think. All I know is there was a freaking swimming pool on the David Cole video at Auschwitz. Okay, well, you guys, if you want to keep chatting, you can keep on chatting, but I'm going to wrap this up. Once again, my name is Mark Allen. It is now 5/18 Thursday, January 6, 2010. My website is at www.truthin7minutes.com. You can place your email address in there if there's a major event that's happening and you would like to hear my thoughts on that. Just put your email address in there, and I'll email you an alert about it. And if you want to find out when I'm doing these little minor talks like this, go to truthin7minutes.com/chat. That'll redirect you to TalkShoe, and you'll see the schedule coming up. If you want to get an email about these small little chats that aren't major chats, you can sign up for TalkShoe and follow me. I didn't choose that word. That's what TalkShoe says. TalkShoe is a Masonic organization, too. Just look at their logo. Look at the sun in their logo. And you follow me, and then you have to do a second thing, I understand, and then you have to get alerts or something to that effect. I will tweet this show next week. Looking forward to it. Great. It's great to have you on, Jonna Murray. Okay, time for the haircut. I'll talk to you guys next week, Monday, January 10th at 8 o'clock. Take care.